All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Train Station. As always, I am your host, A Train. Today is episode 35, and we're going to talk about the Super Bowl that happened yesterday and how there are, some Lions fans out there that were supportive of Matthew Stafford, but there was also the hater fans, and I want to get into that in just a moment. But before I get into any of that, how about that game? Absolutely incredible, but not even just the game itself. The NFL playoffs as a whole was just absolutely incredible. Uh, but it wasn't just the halftime, or it wasn't just the Super Bowl that was great, but the halftime show was also fantastic. One of the best halftime shows I've seen in years. And I want to talk about that first before I get into the actual topic at hand here. So the halftime show, a lot of older people probably wasn't really, it wasn't really geared towards them for once. It was definitely geared towards people in their 30s and, mid 20s, early 30s, even their later 30s. It was definitely geared towards people like that, with the Super Bowl halftime show being Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Mary J. Blige, and a surprise appearance by 50 Cent. So it was definitely, my generation type of performers, and it was fantastic. I wish they would have been able to get more time, though. They needed probably 15 more minutes or so. I would have been totally okay with pausing the game to go longer. Obviously, they opened up the halftime show with some California love, with the Super Bowl being in Los Angeles, California. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg opened it up with California love. Absolutely fantastic opening. And it was just one of the better halftime shows we've seen in years. Last year was The Weeknd, who The Weeknd is great, has great music, but the halftime show fell flat. The year before wasn't as great. A lot of people are saying this halftime show rivaled Prince when he was singing Purple Rain in the Rain. I don't remember that halftime show, but in recent memory, this is by far one of the best halftime shows that we've had. Everybody did a fantastic job. Just some takeaways from it. When Eminem came out, obviously forget about Dre. Had to be what he started with, but he transitioned into Lose Yourself. I know that's his most iconic song, but I wish he would have kind of transitioned into My Name Is. I think that would have really gotten the crowd hyped up and excited. Also, from Kendrick Lamar's standpoint, I wish he would have done Humble, but still overall a great, fantastic show. Uh, Definitely one too many people though. I think they should have just done like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Kendrick Lamar, or Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Eminem. I think having six people was just too many. They tried to crowd too much of into it at one time, and it just it felt rushed, and that's why I said they should have been able to go another 15 minutes. But I know halftime isn't that long, but I would have been totally okay with them pushing it back 15 minutes, just for that reason. Um, yeah, but a fantastic halftime show nonetheless. Now we're gonna get into the actual game. Uh, I spoke on it briefly. I said that the Rams would have been 34-31. My prediction on the score was off. However, the Rams winning by 3 was not off. Rams ended up winning 23-20. Um, in a game that was back and forth, the Rams opened up very hot, and it looked like they were going to run away with it. And then, the turnovers and the mistakes started to pile up. The Bengals come crawling back, as Joe Burrow does. And Jalen Ramsey, who's supposedly the best corner in the NFL, looked like absolute burnt toast yesterday. Did not look good. I know that 75-yard touchdown was not his fault because of the blatant face mask that was not called. But, there was questionable and tacky calls both ways, even though this is one of the Super Bowls where the refs have let them play compared to recent years. They definitely let them get away with a lot more than they should have on both sides of the ball. I don't know what the NFL's problem is, but the NFL has to absolutely find a way to figure out how to fix their refereeing, because their refereeing continues to just be some of the worst referees we have in all of sports. You know, NBA refs are soft, but the NFL, it's just like they're just bad. And if you're not gonna call out some things all game, don't call it at the end of the game. The Rams got very lucky at the end of the game to have some certain calls go their way that they really kind of let them play throughout the game beforehand. Um, but as always, of course, don't let the refs decide the game. Um, and I mentioned earlier as well the blatant face mask offensive pass interference on the Bengals that led to a 75-yard touchdown that shouldn't have. So the NFL has a continued ref problem that they really need to address and they really need to fix. At this point, it's looking like the replacement refs that we had years ago really weren't that bad. So yeah, a very good back and forth game. Came down to the wire. And of course, ice in his veins. Matthew Stafford does what Matthew Stafford does best. Goes down, leads a game-winning touchdown drive, and the Rams win. And Matthew Stafford gets his first ring, and that's the big discussion here tonight. That's the big focal point here tonight, or this afternoon or evening or whatever you call 4:30 in the afternoon, or 4:30 at 4:30 p.m., whatever you call that, afternoon, evening, pre-evening, whatever. That's the biggest discussion point I want to talk about today, because I mentioned it very, very briefly in the beginning, but there was a lot of Lions fans who wanted Matthew Stafford to capture it, and then there was a lot of Lions fans who are part of that Lions cult that think he was the problem. So before we get into anything else, we're gonna bite this Matthew Stafford thing right now. For those that think Matthew Stafford was the problem, I give you two names who the Lions also completely destroyed. Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson. Two of arguably the greatest at the position that they played in running back and wide receiver. Arguably the greatest ever at their position, at their respective position. Completely wasted by the Detroit Lions. They asked, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson both forced into an early retirement because the Lions refused to put talent around them to be able to get it done. Barry Sanders still had plenty left in the tank when the Lions let him, when he requested a trade, they denied it. So, to get out of it, he just said, all right, I'm done playing football. I don't need you. I don't need this organization. Calvin Johnson, years later, gets into the league. Like I said, arguably the greatest wide receiver of all time. Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, also in that conversation. Completely ruined by the Lions, with Matthew Stafford nonetheless. But that first year he's on the team, they go 0-16. They take Matthew Stafford. Things look like they're going to turn around. And they did make the playoffs 3 times under Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. 0-3, obviously, but very, very bleak, positives in an organization that has failed its best players time and time and time again. So I think the Lions had learned from their past mistakes of not trading Barry Sanders, who Calvin Johnson also wanted out of Detroit. You cannot blame him. And the Lions once again refused. So Calvin Johnson walked away from the NFL because the Lions refused to trade him, and dealing with all the injuries that he dealt with, such and such. He walked away from the game, completely ruining his chance at a Super Bowl. I could have seen him in like a New England jersey or a Green Bay jersey, or like a Saints or somebody who was good at the time, who could have made having him make the difference of them be winning and losing the game. And yeah, so they completely ruined two great players. Matthew Stafford sticks around, spends 12 years in an organization that has completely failed him. They completely failed Calvin Johnson, and they completely failed Barry Sanders. And now, as I get older and I really start to realize, as I start to get smarter and I realize things, as a kid, I was oblivious. I was just a Lions fan. I don't know why. I grew up and I chose the Lions. One of the worst decisions of my life that I've ever made was choosing to be a Lions fan. But as a kid, I was oblivious to the obvious. Everybody always told me, blah, blah, as long as the Fords on the team, they're never going to win, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, no, you guys are wrong. All we need is this, this, and this. Well, needing this, and this has been the story for the Lions year after year after year after year after year. The Lions continue to fail every great player that comes through. At some point, when do we look at the organization? As I mentioned, as I grow older, I start to see these things. And sometimes you realize that the owners just don't care to put out a good football team. As long as the Fords own the Lions, are associated with the Lions, and are making money off of the Lions, they will continue down this path of garbage and being one of the worst NFL franchises in the entire league. And the fans don't help, because the fans are a cult. Oh, they think like I did as a kid, but they do it in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Nobody understands that as long as the Fords own the Detroit Lions will continue to be a poverty franchise. And Lions fans are a cult who see nothing wrong with it. They continue to buy tickets. They continue to shell out money to the Fords. They continue this sign of mediocrity. They refuse change, But it's funny that, they refuse all this change, yet they'll complain that the last movie they saw was bad, or the food that they ate is cold, and then they'll send it back, and they expect better results in a movie or the food that they had, but they don't expect better results with their football team. They're going to just keep shelling out money to the Fords, and as long as the Fords can just use the Lions as a tax write-off, there's no need for them to put out a good football product. Matthew Stafford carried the Lions on his back for 12 seasons. They never hooked him up with a sufficient run game. He had a defense twice, and they made the playoffs both times. But what did they lack? They lacked a running game. They lacked the talent to win. They made the playoffs, but they didn't have the talent to go further than the playoffs. The playoffs was their limit. And so when they make the playoffs, what do the Lions decide is the best thing? Oh, your coach has made the playoffs pretty much almost every year he's been here? That's too good for us. We gotta fire him. Jim Caldwell had the team rolling, consistently made them an 8-8, 9-7, 10-6 team. That's what Jim Caldwell did. I was always not really a fan of Caldwell simply because of his conservative play calls at certain times in the game. But that just seems to happen with every football coach. They start playing really, really conservative. He was too good for the Lions. He made the playoffs. Lions cannot have that happen. So when they fire Caldwell, they change the offensive coordinator, and then, they bring in another guy, they bring in a new coordinator. Matthew Stafford went through so many different coordinators, this and that, and continued to bring the team on their back. There's no way they win as many games as they do if they had anybody else at quarterback, which I will get into because this year is further proof of that. But the Lions Jim Caldwell was too good for Detroit. and he had Matthew Stafford and all them guys playing at a super high level, probably the best that we've seen the Lions in years. He had them playing at that potential. And the Forge just thought it was too good. Lions fans weren't satisfied with the playoffs. They had to have him fired because it was either too good or he didn't do enough. He made the playoffs, which for Detroit should be taken as an accomplishment that he was able to take this sorry organization to the playoffs. So you get Caldwell out of there. You change Stafford's coordinators. You have him deal with like 3 coordinators in 3 years. You don't have any consistency around him. You let Ndamukong Suh walk. You let your defense that you actually had really good, you let them walk. You let Calvin Johnson retire. So now Matthew Stafford has no weapons, no defense, and no run game. Don't even get me started with the offensive line that he had for the majority of his career. You bring in Golden Tate, who's finally a weapon that is serviceable for Matthew Stafford. But then you still don't surround him with the defense. His last year in Detroit, they had the 32nd ranked defense. There's 32 teams in the league. You cannot expect a quarterback of him. You cannot expect any quarterback in the NFL to succeed with a 32nd ranked defense. Outside of the 2 years that he had Ndamukong Suh, Cliff Averill, Van Den Bosch, all those guys, when they were really, really good, they had Darius Slay. Outside of those 2 years, he had some of the worst defenses I think I've ever seen put on a football field. Like, what are you doing, guys? How did we go from having Darius Slay, Ndamukong Suh, Cliff Averill and company to this? You failed him in the running game. Outside of Reggie Bush having 1,000 yards, he didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher on his team. He had a 1,000-yard rusher one time with Reggie Bush. You couldn't put a decent running back around him. You couldn't put a defense around him. And you most certainly couldn't put an offensive line around him. Dude dealt with injury after injury after injury. And that's the thing with Matthew Stafford that I don't think some Lions fans, not all, because like I said, there were some that were going for him, and I will talk about that. But the man put his body on the line for a sorry organization and a sorry football team to try to do everything in his power to win. So, they once again fired their coach, Matt Patricia. They bring in Dan Campbell. They bring in a new GM. They bring in... Everything is new. Matthew Stafford said, I'm not going to be part of another rebuild. Calvin Johnson wanted to be traded, didn't get requested. Barry Sanders didn't want to get traded, or wanted to get traded, didn't get requested. Matthew Stafford, his trade probably wasn't going to get requested until it did. The Rams come calling, we will give you a first-round pick for the next 2 years, a couple of thirds, and you take this bum Jared Goff off of our team for Matthew Stafford. And I think they gave the Lions an extra first-round pick to take Jared Goff. They saw the talent in Matthew Stafford that I see and that most people see. And he ended up being an LA Ram. But I was having a discussion with one of my buddies last night, and I hope he ends up in the chat at some point because, he was talking about loyalty and how Matthew Stafford wasn't loyal to the Lions, which could not be further from the truth. Especially with those that he's a fan of, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to just slowly get into how he said that Matthew Stafford was not loyal to the Lions. That could not be further from the truth, and here's why. As I said, the dude dealt with multiple injuries year in and year out. He dealt with all this stuff to play on a team that maybe got 6 to 8 wins a year, sometimes less. Usually it was about 4 to 7 wins you could guarantee the Lions would get. And he was talking about how Matthew Stafford isn't loyal, but Matthew Stafford literally is the definition of loyalty. And he could have stayed and tried to win a Super Bowl, but it was never going to happen. He was never going to get there with the Lions. And, And I say that Matthew Stafford is the definition of loyalty because Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders went through the same exact thing. They were so loyal to the Lions organization for what? The Lions don't deserve good players. The Lions don't deserve anything. Until the Fords sell the team, the Lions don't deserve to do anything in a positive manner. And Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders realized that this relationship just isn't going to work anymore. It's time to get out. But the Detroit Lions are that crazy, girlfriend or boyfriend that doesn't let you escape. They want to keep you in that grasp because they don't want to lose you. And it looked like it was going to be that same way for Matthew Stafford. He noticed it as well. You guys are changing things up again. I'm coming towards the end of my career. It's about time that, I try and go get one. The man was loyal for 12 seasons. At some point, the relationship just doesn't work anymore and it's time to move on. The same thing happened with Drew Brees and the Chargers. The same thing happened with Peyton Manning and the Colts. The same thing happened with Tom Brady and the Patriots. Sometimes the relationship has to end and you have to move on in order to see how things really are. The Colts didn't want Peyton Manning anymore. They didn't think he would be the same after the neck injury. Okay, great. That relationship ended. Tom Brady and management had a falling out in New England. He no longer wanted to play under Bill Belichick. They refused to start to build the team that he felt was capable of winning him a 7th Super Bowl. That relationship ended. Drew Brees and the Chargers had a falling out. That relationship ended. At some point, we want these players to be as loyal as possible to our organization. But at one point, do we ever blame the organization for getting rid of these players because they want to go in a different direction or they don't feel the player, has it? Why is it always the players that are expected to stay loyal to the organization when the organizations will turn their back on them and either cut them, trade them, or release them in a matter of seconds? So we expect these players to be loyal and loyal and loyal, but the organizations don't do the same thing to the players. And, I was having a very heated discussion with him about this last night because he was trying to say that, loyalty, there was no way Matthew Stafford is loyal, but he is, and these organizations, aren't loyal, and not all organizations are like that, but there are some. The Pittsburgh Steelers were very, very loyal to Big Ben. The Broncos were very, very loyal to John Elway. And, their organizations are loyal to certain players in certain instances, but a lot of the time, in a business like the NFL, they're going to do what is best or what they feel is best for their business. So when Peyton Manning had the neck injury, the Colts didn't feel he would come back and perform at a Super Bowl caliber level as they were expecting. So they moved him to Denver. He won another Super Bowl in Denver. The relationship with Tom Brady in New England. He didn't feel that he could win with the current team, and Bill Belichick, is Bill Belichick, and we all question what he does, but he feels like he does what needs to be done for his team. He didn't build, a good enough team capable enough to win a 7th Super Bowl around Tom Brady. So Tom Brady said, all right, I'm out. Things in sports happen all the time. It's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. So why should players have to show their loyalty when the organizations are looking out for the business aspect of themselves? And it's really a two-way street, but Stafford gave his all to the organization, was injured constantly, put his back on the line each and every week. They played the Lions this year, and there was the Lions and him mic'd up, and they were asking him what year this was, and he was saying, this is year 13. They were like, oh, you look like you're 20. He said, thanks, but I feel like I'm 50. Yeah, because the Lions failed to put a team around him. He got hit all the time, And Joe Burrow in Cincinnati's going to feel those effects too if they don't figure that out. But they failed to put an offensive line around him. They failed to put a team around him. And, at some point that relationship just kind of went south and it was time for him to move on. Just like currently Aaron Rodgers probably done in Green Bay because the relationships run out, it's time to move on. So if you're going to say Matthew Stafford isn't loyal to the Lions, then you have to look at every player that has been traded to say they're not loyal because it's not possible for them to be loyal because they didn't stay with their team. Very rarely does a player now, especially nowadays, does a player start his career on end his career on the same team he started it with. It just doesn't happen. I mean, Tom Brady, nobody ever expected Tom Brady to leave the Patriots. And even he left the Patriots. So, it's a ridiculous thing to expect these players to do all of this when the organizations don't have their back. And Lions fans, the moment that Matthew Stafford wanted out, were saying he was the reason that the Lions are bad. Once he leaves, the Lions are going to be much better off. 0-3 in the playoffs. Garbage organization, garbage teams around him. He leaves to go to the LA Rams. As I mentioned earlier, all those picks and whatnot. Jared Goff. Matthew Stafford leads his team to a Super Bowl. 0-3 in his first 12 years in the playoffs. Goes to LA. 3-0. Chance to go 4-0 with the Super Bowl ring. Gets it done. Lions, on the other hand, currently battling for the second. They currently have the second pick in the draft. The second pick. You won 3 games. Jacksonville won 3. The only reason you don't have the first pick is because you decided it was a good idea to tie, which is still one of the dumbest rules in football, but that's okay. That's a topic for another day. So if the Lions are so much better off with Matthew Stafford, how are you managing to never have a top pick with Matthew Stafford? And yes, I know 2019 they had the number 3 pick. He was on the team. He was injured for that season. He didn't really play a lot. Other than that, the Lions never really had a super duper top pick. Why? Because Matthew Stafford's talent alone won them more games than they deserved to win. So to those Lions fans that said Matthew Stafford was the problem, look at where the organization is now. The organization is in a worse spot now than when Matthew Stafford was there. Jared Goff's most definitely not the answer. The team is much worse. And there's no signs that I have any faith in the Lions, even with a new GM who has been drafting very well. I have any faith in the organization from how they have been in the past. So to those Lions fans that think Matthew Stafford was the problem, the Lions won 3 games. They have no offensive weapons. They have no defense. They have nobody really on the defense that looks promising. They have nobody outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown on the offense that looks promising. DeAndre Swift excluded. They finally have a running back. Their offensive line looks like it might be coming together. But even then, they're dealing with injuries constantly on the offensive line, so they can't all play together. If you have faith in the Lions to think that they're better off now than when they were with Matthew Stafford, never watch another game of football. Never talk to me about football. Never discuss the sport of football with anybody. Not your friends, not your family, and most certainly not to me. Because you have no idea what you're talking about. You are absolutely clueless. The Lions, if anything, should have taught you to find another team to root for and or stop buying things to make the Lions money. Calvin Johnson, couldn't win with him. You couldn't win you won 1 playoff game with Barry Sanders, the greatest running back of all time. You won 1. Not 1 Super Bowl, 1 playoff game. The Lions are one of 3 teams to never make the Super Bowl, and the other 2 haven't been around nearly as long. At some point, if every player wants out of the organization, it's no longer on the players. Darius Slay wanted out. But that had to do with coaching conflicts and all of that. Ndamukong Suh, you guys let him walk because he wanted money and you refused to pay him. You wanted Calvin Johnson wanted out, Barry Sanders wanted out, Matthew Stafford wanted out, Darius Slay, as I said, wanted out. At what point do we look at the Lions and say this organization is just helpless? Why do we keep feeding money to the machine? In order for the machine to stop running, you have to stop feeding the machine. Stop buying tickets to the Lions games. Oh, tickets are cheap. I want to go take my daughter to a Lions game. Stop wasting your time. Stop being overly optimistic every year, drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking that this regime is going to be different than the last, because here's a reality check. It's not. They've been bad for 60 years. They're going to be bad for another 60 years unless the Fords decide to sell the team. At some point, the Fords have to just be like, all right, this isn't working. Let's give it to somebody that knows what they're doing, that wants to run a football team successfully. And even if that means moving the team out of Detroit, do what you have to do to earn the respect of fans, because a lot of diehard Lions fans no longer care about your organization. No, it's only the casuals that stick around, and you're catering to them at this point. If the machine breaks down, we break down. Absolutely. I'm glad that you said that. You said if the machine breaks down, we break down. No, the organization breaks down, forcing the Fords to sell the team. So if the machine breaks down and stops running, then the Lions the Fords have to look into making better decisions football-wise, because the money will no longer be coming in, and then they would be forced to be putting a good product onto the field. So no, if the machine breaks down, we break down. No, if the machine breaks down, the Fords break down. So I somewhat agree with that statement, but I don't 100% agree with that statement, but I very much appreciate you typing that into the chat. Lions fans, just stop giving your time and effort. On Sundays, when there's a Lions game on, go do something else. Please, go find something else, because the real winner here is not you guys. The real winner here is the Fords. The real winner here is the ones who don't watch the Lions games. If you're wasting your Sunday watching the Lions games, then I'm just going to assume you have nothing better to do. You're probably all by yourself, or you want to subject your family to pain, because that's all the Lions do, is bring you pain each and every week. Matthew Stafford was not the problem in Detroit. Calvin Johnson was not the problem in Detroit. Barry Sanders was not the problem in Detroit. And I will say, for those Lions fans that loved Matthew Stafford like I did, rooting for the Rams all season long for Matthew Stafford to get that illustrious Super Bowl ring, you've seen what happens when you put a team around this man. You've seen what happens when he has a competent owner willing to risk it all to get the Super Bowl ring. He finally, after 13 seasons, 12 wasted in the city of Detroit. See what happens when we have a competent owner who knows what they're doing around them to win a Super Bowl. The Lions are poverty, and the fans will continue to blame everybody but themselves for the reason that's wrong with the Lions. That's all I have on that situation. I'm happy for Matthew Stafford. Nobody deserves a ring more. And I know there's probably going to be Packer fans that said this. Well, guess what? My boy has as many rings as your boy does, and your organization is much better run. I don't know what's next for the Lions, for Matthew Stafford. I heard that he's working on an extension with the Rams, but they have salary cap issues because they went all in. What are they going to do with Von Miller? What are they going to do with OBJ? What are they going to do? Is Aaron Donald going to retire? That might help free up some cap. You just don't know. And Matthew Stafford got his one, but now is staying in LA going to be the right choice? He was never going to get one in Detroit. I'm so happy he got out of this garbage organization to go and win a Super Bowl. Don't know what the future holds for them. For the Lions, misery, failure, that's next in line for them. They'll probably be picking in the top 5 again next year, and probably the year after that. And they'll probably be picking in the top 10 for the next decade, because that's what the Lions do. So Lions fans, that cult that you guys are a part of, I am not a part of that cult. I have been called many times an unrealistic or a fake fan by Lions fans because I tell you how it is. I don't put hope into these guys. I don't put faith into these guys. If they win, cool. If they don't win, it's just a typical Sunday. But I am no longer putting faith into an organization that has given me nothing to put faith into. And I don't know why people continuously think each and every year that things are going to change. Matthew Stafford was not the problem in Detroit, Lions fans, and I hope those Stafford haters, I hope he shut him up this year with the ring. That's all I have for you guys as far as that goes. The Super Bowl was great. Halftime show was amazing. Just be sure to follow the channels. Social media's right there. Click on them. Right there. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Follow those right there. I don't know when I will be back. I have some personal matters to attend to for the next week as I start a new job. I'm going to be hoping to be live here in the next couple of days. Come back at you guys. I don't know when and hopefully I'm going to start getting into streaming some video games a little bit. Take this podcast really to the next level. It's really for podcasting, getting on here, talking to you guys about sports and, you know, complaining about why my teams are so garbage. But I play Apex a lot. I play FIFA and stuff a lot. And WWE is dropping soon, so I might have to get on to stream that. There's a lot of exciting things coming out. A lot of new games coming out. A lot of games currently out that are still great. So I might try and dip it into the gaming world a little bit and turn this podcast, you know, just into a whole podcast and game streaming type thing. Stick around. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. As always, I'm A-Train. This has been another episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stop going to Lions games. Peace.